Hey there, Mrs. File here. So we're still in the danger and power of a single story. So we're paying attention to the fact that stories have the power to create a stereotype, which can paint a brush that all people are judged by. And they also, by having lots of stories, they can flesh out and make people more real and groups of people more real. So our next reading, let me share my screen here, is called, there we go, The First Day by Edward Jones. It was in William Morrow magazine in 1992. Here we go. In an otherwise unremarkable September morning, long before I learned to be ashamed of my mother, she takes my hand and we set off down to New Jersey Avenue to begin my very first day of school. I'm wearing a checkered, like blue and green cotton dress, and scattered about these colors are bits of yellow and white and brown. My mother has uncharacteristically spent nearly an hour on my hair that morning, plaiting and replaiting, which means braiding and rebraiding, so that my scalp now tingles. Whenever I turn my head quickly, my nose fills that faint smell of Dixie peach hair grease. The smell is somehow a soothing one now, and I will reach for it time and time again before the morning ends. All the plaits, each of which with a blue barrette near the tip and twisted into an uncommon sturdiness, I will last until I go to bed that night, something that has never happened before. My stomach is full of milk and oatmeal sweetened like brown sugar. Everything else I have on, my pale green slip and underwear are new. The underwear having come three to a plastic package with a little girl on the front who appears to be dancing. Behind my ears, my mother, to stop my whining, has dabbed the stingiest bit of her gardenia perfume, the last present my father gave her before he disappeared into memory. Because I cannot smell it, I have only her word that the perfume is there. I'm also wearing yellow socks trimmed with lines of black and white around the tops. My shoes are my greatest joy, black patent leather miracles. And when one is nicked at the toe later that morning in class, my heart will break. I'm carrying a pencil sharpener, a small 10-cent tablet, and a black and white speckled cover. My mother does not believe that a girl in kindergarten needs such things, so I'm taking them only because of my insistent whining and because they are presents from our neighbors, Mary Keith and Blondell Harris. Miss Mary and Miss Blondell are watching my two younger sisters until my mother returns. The women are precious to me as my mothers and sisters. Out playing one day, I have overheard an older child speaking to another child, calling Miss Mary and Miss Blondell a word that is brand new to me. This is my mother. When I say the word, it's fun to one of my sisters. It's funny to one of my sisters. My mother slaps me across the mouth, and the word is lost for years and years. All the way down New Jersey Avenue, the sidewalks are teeming with children. In my neighborhood, I have many friends, but I see none of them as my mother and I walk. We cross New York Avenue, we cross Pierce Street, and we cross L and K, and still I see no one who knows my name. At I Street, between New Jersey Avenue and 3rd Street, we enter Seton Elementary School, a time-worn, sad-faced building across the street from my mother's church, Mount Carmel Baptist. Just inside the front door, women out of the advertisements in ebony are greeting the parents and children. One woman who greets us has pearls thick as jumbo marbles that come down almost to her navel. And she acts as if she's known me all her life, touching my shoulder, cupping her hand under my chin. She is enveloped in a perfume that only I know is not gardenia. Then, when in answer to her question, my mother tells her that we live at 1227 New Jersey Avenue, the woman first seems to be picturing in her head where we live. Then she shakes her head and says that we're at the wrong school. We should be at Walker Jones. My mother shakes her head vigorously. I want her to go here, my mother says. If I'd have wanted her someplace else, I'd have took her there. The woman continues to act as if she has known me all my life, but she tells my mother that we live beyond the area that Seton serves. My mother is not convinced, and for several more minutes, she questions the woman about why I cannot attend Seton. For as many Sundays as I can remember, perhaps even Sundays when I was in the womb, my mother had pointed across the street to Seton as we come and go from Mount Carmel. You're going to go there and learn about the whole world. But one of the guardians of that place is saying no and no again. I'm learning this about my mother. The higher up on the scale of respectability a person is, and teachers are rather high in her eyes, the less she is liable to let them push her around. But finally, I see in her eyes the closing gate, and she takes my hand and we leave the building. On the steps, she stops as people move past us on the other side. Mama, I can't go to school. She says nothing at first. And then she takes my hand again, and we are down the steps quickly, nearing New Jersey Avenue before I can blink. This is my mother. She says, one monkey, don't stop no show. Walker Jones is a larger, newer school, and I immediately like it because of that. But it's not across the street from my mother's church, her rock, one of her connections to God. And I sense her doubts as she absently rubs her thumb over the back of her hand. We find our way into the crowded auditorium where gray metal chairs are set up in the middle of the room. Along the wall to the left are tables and other chairs. Every chair seems occupied by a child or adult. Somewhere in the room, a child is crying, a cry that rises above the buzz talk of so many people. Strewn together on the floor are dozens and dozens of pieces of white paper, and people are walking over them without any thought of picking them up. And seeing this lack of concern, I am all of a sudden afraid. Is this where they register for school? My mother asked the woman at the tables. The woman looks up slowly, as if she's heard this question once too often. She nods. She is tiny, almost as small as the girl standing beside her. The mother's hair is set in massive curlers, and all of those curlers are made of paper money. Here a dollar bill, there a $5 bill. The girl's hair is arrayed in curls, but some of them are beginning to droop, and this makes me happy. On some table beside the woman's pocketbook is a large notebook worthy of someone in high school. And looking at me at the notebook, the girl places her hand possessively on it. In her other hand, she holds several pencils with thick crowns of additional erasers. These the forms you got to use? My mother asked the woman, picking up a few pieces of paper from the table. Is this what you have to fill out? The woman tells her yes, but that they need to fill out only one. I see, my mother says, looking about the room. Then, would you help me with this form? That is, if you don't mind. The woman asks my mother what she means. This form, would you mind helping me fill it out? The woman seems not to understand. Can't read it. I don't know how to read or write. I'm asking you to help me. My mother looks at me, then looks away. I know almost all her looks, but this one is brand new to me. Would you help me then? The woman says, why, sure. And suddenly she appears happier and so much more satisfied with everything. She finishes the form for her daughter, and my mother and I step aside to wait for her, while we find 2 chairs nearby and sit. My mother is now diseased, according to the girl's eyes. Until the movement my mother takes her in the form back to the front of the auditorium, the girl never stops looking at my mother. I stare back at her. Don't stare, my mother says to me. You know better than that. Another woman out of ebony ads takes the woman's child away. Now the woman says upon returning, let's see what we can do for you two. My mother answers the questions as the woman reads off the form. They start with my last name, then go on to my first and middle names. This school, I think. This is going to be my school. My mother slowly enunciates each word of my name. This is my mother. As the questions go on, she takes from her pocketbook a document after document, as if they will support my right to attend school. If she's been saving them up for this moment. Indeed, she takes out more papers than I have ever seen her do in other places. My birth certificate, my baptismal record, a doctor's letter concerning my bout with chickenpox, rent receipts, records of immunization, a letter about her public assistance payments, even her marriage license. Every single paper that has anything even remotely to do with my 5-year-old life. Few of the papers are needed here, but it does not matter, and my mother continues to pull out the documents with a purposefulness, sorry, of a magician pulling out a long string of scarves. She has learned that money is the beginning and end of everything in this world. And when the woman finishes, my mother offers her 50 cents, and the woman accepts it without hesitation. My mother and I are just about the last parent and child in the room. My mother presents the form to a woman sitting on the front of the stage, and the woman looks at it and writes something on a white card, which she gives to my mother. Before long, the woman who has taken the girl with the drooping curls appears behind us, speaks to the sitting woman, and introduces herself to my mother and me. She is to be my teacher, she tells my mother. My mother stares. We go into the hall where my mother kneels down to me. Her lips are quivering. I'll be back to pick you up at 12 o'clock. I don't want you to go nowhere. You wait right here and listen to every word she say. I touch her lips and press them together. It's an old, old game between us. She puts my hand down at my side, which is not part of the game. She stands and looks a second at the teacher and then turns and walks away. I see where she has darned one of the socks the night before. Her shoes make loud sounds in the hall. She passes through the doors, and I can still hear the loud sounds of her shoes. And even when the teacher turns me around towards the classrooms, I hear what must be the singing and talking of other children in the world. I can still hear my mother's footsteps above it all. Okay, so judgment again, people judging people because they can't read and having to, the embarrassment, the shame of having someone in your family who can't read and needing to ask for help to do something as simple as fill out a form and not understanding why a child can't go to the school that's right across from your church when it makes sense that that's where your child would go. Very, very unhappy story. So we'll meet for the next reading.